What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Recently watched a video of CEO and promoter Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn, aka the Spin Master, basically trying to put a band-aid on a 12-gauge shotgun wound as far as the aftermath to the Anthony Joshua loss to Alexander Usyk, trying to put a positive spin on him. As we know, Eddie Hearn is the P. Diddy of boxing promoters, always in the video. Not surprising that he's pretty much doing the same thing he did after the Ruiz loss. He's doing a lot of interviews, basically saying that AJ is going to come back stronger, AJ going to win the rematch. AJ had the wrong game plan. AJ didn't use his physical attributes. You know, basically saying that AJ is going to make the proper adjustments and regain his titles back, become two-time heavyweight champion. Basically saying the fight was close for the first 8 rounds, but he thought Usyk pulled away from the fight. But he said it's a good thing for his number 2 fighter in the Matchroom Boxing, a guy that's on really a fight-by-fight deal with Matchroom Boxing, but pretty much with Matchroom Boxing because his last, I don't know. I know his last at least 5-6 fights at the very least have been with Matchroom Boxing. That is Dillian, aka the Can Man. He stole that from Adrian Broner, but he called himself the Can Man. White. He said it's a good thing for White. Now he said White said all the right things, positive things, gave Anthony Joshua some constructive criticism in the aftermath of his loss to Alexander Usyk. Basically said he fought the wrong game plan and he needs to use his physical attributes. But he also stated that Dillian-Whyte is in a good position now, because if AJ would have won, that would have further set back Dillian-Whyte, according to Eddie Hearn. Now that AJ lost, he said this puts Dillian-Whyte in the proverbial catbird seats. I don't know what Dillian-Whyte in his position in WBC has anything to do with a guy that's not even ranked in the WBC. Anthony Joshua, who don't even hold belts no more in the WBA, WBO, and IBF. He's a former champion. He's going to get the rematch with Alexander Usyk. He has a rematch clause with Alexander Usyk. I don't know what those two have to go with each other. I know his ultimate plan is to make AJ and Dillian-Whyte. He's been trying to make that happen actually for the last 3.5 years. But he wants that fight to take place for all the belts. He don't want them guys just fighting for AJ's belts when he had 3 belts at the time. That's why he threw a low ball offer at Dillian-Whyte prior to Dillian-Whyte signing the fight. Big baby Miller, and we know Miller failed a PD test. He had multiple PD in his system, and he got pulled from that fight. And Andy Ruiz came in the 11th hour. What he had, like 5.5 weeks of training, might have been less than that. And he came in and pulled one of the biggest upsets in boxing since Buster Douglas defeated Iron Mike Tyson. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna set the stage for you, man. This here with Eddie Hearn and Dillian-Whyte, and trying to get Dillian-Whyte a shot at the WBC, and in particular the WBC champion at that time, Deontay, the Bronze Bomber Wilder. This goes back to 3.5 years after Dillian-Whyte defeated Lucas Brown, and he got in front of the microphone. I believe it was a Sky Sports microphone, and said, I'm ready, let's go, I'm ready. And Eddie Hearn's been trying to set the fight up between Dillian-Whyte and Deontay Wilder, really before that interview. Let's go back to AJ when he was fighting Carlos Takam. Sky Sports, at the behest of Eddie Hearn, got Deontay Wilder to come down there, wanted Deontay Wilder to come down there and be a guest analyst for Sky Sports. Deontay Wilder agreed to do that, but Deontay Wilder also wanted to have a face-off with Anthony Joshua after his fight with Carlos Takam. Now, if he was successful against Carlos Takam, get the win, he wanted to do a face-off. He wanted to go head up with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua didn't want to do that. Anthony Joshua said, that's my ring, that would be disrespectful, and basically threatened to have security keep Wilder from entering the ring. Eddie Hearn co-signed that. Deontay Wilder caught wind of that, and Deontay Wilder decided not to go. He said, if I can't have a face-to-face after the fight with Takam, I don't want to go there. I'm trying to promote. I'm trying to get the ball rolling on me fighting Anthony Joshua. But the problem with that was Eddie Hearn didn't want that to happen. Eddie Hearn wanted Deontay Wilder to fight Dillian-Whyte. Now they kind of went back and forth, and through the media, and things got said back and forth. And Wilder said, "Okay, look, you want me to fight Dillian-Whyte, your guard dog, AJ's guard dog. You want me to fight him? Cool, no problem. I'll fight him, but just put Anthony Joshua on the end of that contract. If I defeat Dillian-Whyte, I get Anthony Joshua next." Eddie Hearn did like Red and Friday and said, "No, I'm not gonna do it." You know, when Debo said, "You want some of this, old man?" Old Red said, "No." That's the same way Eddie Hearn said, "No." Didn't want no part of that deal that Deontay Wilder proposed him. Deontay Wilder said, "Then, but forget that then. If I can't be guaranteed the win of Anthony Joshua after I knock out your guard dog, then I ain't signing the contract to fight Dillian-Whyte." Deontay Wilder was even willing to go over there and fight Dillian-Whyte over there in the UK, which was kind of crazy because Deontay Wilder was the champion and Dillian-Whyte was the challenger. But all along, man, Eddie Hearn wanted Deontay Wilder to come over here to be a Sky Sports analyst. Wasn't nothing but a setup. It was a setup. They wanted him to come over here to be an analyst, and they wanted Dillian-Whyte to roll up on Deontay Wilder, to step to Deontay Wilder, to start a big commotion with Deontay Wilder, get headline news over the UK, and help sell a potential matchup with Deontay Wilder and Dillian-Whyte. Deontay Wilder really didn't have no problem with going over there, but he wanted to do a face-off with Anthony Joshua. His goal was to fight Anthony Joshua. He wasn't worried about Anthony Joshua's guard dog, Dillian-Whyte, but Eddie Hearn wanted to set the fight up with Dillian-Whyte and Deontay Wilder over in the UK. Hopefully Dillian-Whyte wins, and then he can set up undisputed at the heavyweight division between Anthony Joshua and Dillian-Whyte. He's been trying to get that done 3.5 years ago. Now a scenario is played out, and he's tried to tie it in with AJ's loss that Dillian-Whyte is in a good position, and Dillian-Whyte must get the winner of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. And he preferably, contrary to popular belief, he prefers Dillian-Whyte versus Deontay Wilder over Dillian-Whyte versus Tyson Fury. Best believe that. He can say in these interviews, okay, well, Fury will beat Wilder and we'll get Fury versus Dillian. Hopefully Dillian beats Fury and we get Dillian versus Anthony Joshua after he beats Usyk in a rematch for undisputed over here in the UK for all the belts. Of course he wants that. But he wants, before that happens, AJ and Dillian-Whyte, he wants Dillian-Whyte and Wilder. He wants that fight. He's been trying to make that fight for 3.5 years. He wants to be part of Deontay Wilder promotion. He would love to be there, center stage, watching Dillian-Whyte and Deontay Wilder go back and forth in a press conference. He would love to be part of that. And he would love to try to get that fight over there in the UK, preferably. He's going to not negotiate in good faith with the PBC. I'm going to tell you how this is going to go. He's not going to negotiate in good faith with the PBC. He'd rather the fight go to purse bid, and he believes he can outbid the PBC. He knows the PBC done put up big money for Canelo fight. They got a lot of money on the line for the Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury trilogy. The deal with Fox is coming to an end. It's up to Fox to pick up the option. And he figures that right now, the PBC is not in a position to put a lot of money into a fight, a mega fight between Deontay Wilder and Dillian-Whyte. He believes that he can outbid the PBC and get that fight set up over there in the UK. And I guarantee you that if he gets that fight over there in the UK, they're going to play hardball. They're not going to accept no rematch clause. Just like AJ got that rematch clause with Usyk, and Usyk was a mandatory, which made no sense, but AJ was the cash cow. He's got the leverage. You want to fight AJ, you got to agree to these demands, or we can walk away and drop the belt. He's going to play hardball with Wilder. He's going to say, look, we're the mandatory. We've been the mandatory for 1,000 days, which is a lie. They probably been number one maybe for 500 days at the most, but they ain't been no mandatory for no 1,000 days. And they're going to play hardball with Wilder. They're not going to give him no rematch clause. This is going to be the winner take all. If they beat Wilder, they ride off into the sunset and then possibly set up the fight with AJ if AJ is successful in the rematch against Usyk. This has been a plan all along. This has been set in motion 3.5 years ago. And Eddie Hearn is having wet dreams tonight just thinking about, just lusting about the potential matchup with Deontay Wilder versus Dillian Whyte. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires, but make no mistake about it, Eddie Hearn prefers Deontay Wilder versus Dillian Whyte over Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. I think he likes Dillian Whyte's chances against Deontay Wilder, who he thinks is not that great of a boxer, has been hit before, and it just come down to who land that power shot first in the fight between Whyte and Wilder. He likes the chances better than Dillian Whyte fighting a boxer, a guy that's much better boxer, a guy that's much bigger than Dillian Whyte. He figures that Dillian Whyte will probably get schooled in the fight with Tyson Fury. But he will take the lesser two evils. Make no mistake about it, if Tyson Fury beats Wilder, he will still make the fight between Fury and Whyte. But he prefers Deontay Wilder. And he's been looking for that fight for 3.5 years. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts about Eddie Hearn doing Eddie Hearn type of things and putting a spin on the AJ's loss to Usyk and setting the stage to possibly set up the fight that he's been wanting to set up for 3.5 years. And that is Deontay, the Bronze Bomber Wilder, facing Dillian, the Can Man, Whyte. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. Let me throw a little mucking wrench in the whole equation. I wouldn't put it past Mauricio Suleiman in the WBC, who has been hearing these threats and hearing these things said by Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte. I think Dillian Whyte has threatened legal action, or he has already proceeded with legal action against the WBC. I wouldn't put it past for the WBC to say, okay, you want to pursue legal action against us, or you want to process a legal case against us. Okay, whoever comes out on top between Fury and Wilder, the winner of that is going to fight Andy Ruiz. We're going to make Andy Ruiz mandatory. You was in the #1 position when we made Dominic Breazeale the mandatory. You was in the #1 position when we made Luis King Kong Ortiz the mandatory. We're gonna do the same thing. We're going to do the same thing in this scenario, just a different fighter. We're going to make Andy Ruiz, who's ranked very high in the WBC, we're going to make him the mandatory, which is a much bigger fight over here in the United States with Deontay Wilder than a Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder. Much bigger fight. You got the Latino fan base, you got Wilder and the African-American fan base. It would do big numbers, better numbers over here in the United States than a Deontay Wilder versus Dillian Whyte fight. Now, Dillian Whyte will do good numbers over there in the UK fighting Wilder, and Wilder would do good numbers over there in the United States, but it wouldn't do as good of numbers in the United States as a Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz Jr. fight. So I wouldn't put it past Mauricio Suleiman to make him the mandatory, especially when he could say, well, look, you lost one of your last 2 fights, Dillian. You got knocked out in dramatic fashion by Alexander Povetkin. You made right and got and avenged the loss in the rematch, but you still won in one of your last fights. So you don't you look at your last 2 fights and look at Andy Ruiz's last 2 fights. He defeated Areola, another older fighter like Povetkin, and he lost to AJ, the champion. So his last 2 fights have been more, his fought more, well, it ain't been more impressive, but his last 2 fights has been against better competition than Dillian Whyte's last 2 fights. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend, and I'll holler.